Story 1. Use shallots instead of onions. They are small onions with a slightly different flavor. Restaurants use them frequently so they seem fancy. Get a bunch of small tomatoes still on the vine, for example cherry or grape tomatoes. Put them in a frying pan over very low heat with nothing else. No oil, no salt, nothing. After 5 to 10 minutes you will have delicious charred roasted tomatoes still on the vine. It looks fancy and tastes delicious. The only secret is, to quote Anthony Bourdain, don't mess with it. Story 2. Whenever a cream sauce starts to separate, I add an ice cube, whisk while turning down the heat, and the sauce returns. Story 3. I used to be a chef. I will share the best and simplest method for cooking broccoli. 1. Bring a pot of chicken stock to a boil. Cover with the lid. 2. Add fresh broccoli florets to the pot. Remove the lid. 3. When the stock and broccoli return to a boil, turn the heat off. Keep the lid off. 4. When the florets have sunk to the bottom of the pot, they are done about 8 minutes. This is the best way to cook broccoli because perfect texture, intense bright green color, pure broccoli taste with a background flavor from the stock. No timer needed. Cook by visual cues. The stock can be reused. Each use adds more broccoli flavor. Ideal for a long-minute cooking. Bon appetit. Story 4. The dish is seasoned but still tastes like it is missing something. Probably needs an acidic element, such as lemon juice or vinegar. Story 5. Quickly pickle julienne red onions. Not only are the onions themselves great for garnish or other uses, but the pickling liquid is a great combination of sweet, sour, and salty flavors that can be added to countless sauces, vinaigrettes, and other preparations. I prefer to use equal parts rice vinegar and cane sugar, with a splash of water and a large pinch of salt. I am a private chef these days and I use it for many things. Story 6. Cook with a hand towel over your shoulder. Look fancy while making macaroni and cheese. Story 7. Buy some ring molds. Everybody thinks you have a Michelin star when your food is perfectly circular. Use a ring mold for regular mashed potatoes and for sauce. They now cost $55. James Beard Award. Story 8. Many main dishes start with this simple method. Brown your meat in a hot pan with oil and butter to create the fond. Remove the meat and cook your aromatics, such as onions, shallots, and garlic. Add and cook flour to make a roux. Then add the base of your sauce, for example stock, milk, wine, or cream. Simmer and finish with whatever else your recipe calls for, or improvise. There are thousands of variations across different meats, cuisines, and flavor profiles that begin with this approach. Buy an immersion blender to make smoother sauces and aioli. Story 9. A Wellington is a dish cooked and served wrapped in puff pastry. The traditional version uses beef and mushrooms, but a pork tenderloin or salmon fillet can be equally good or better. Wellingtons were once considered haute cuisine because making puff pastry is complex and tedious, but these days puff pastry is available frozen and is just as good as handmade. Story 10. Use a cartouche for simmering or slow cooking sauces or something similar in the oven. Do not blend sauces. Pass them through a fine mesh colander for better texture and flavor. White tomato soup is extraordinary. Place chopped tomatoes in a kitchen cloth, apply light pressure overnight, and collect the drips. The result is a clear liquid with concentrated tomato flavor. Story 11. Smoked cream cheese. Score the top of 1 or 2 blocks of cream cheese. Season all sides, place the blocks on folded foil, and smoke them in a pellet smoker at 200 degrees Fahrenheit for 2 hours. Optionally add hot honey during the last 15 minutes. Serve with pita chips, crackers, and so on. Few restaurants make this and everyone raves about it. It has a distinctive flavor. Story 12. If you are having trouble with excess oil in a cheese sauce, adding sodium citrate will keep the oil from separating from the cheese. It has no impact on flavor and will give you a smoother, creamier sauce. Story 13. The biggest mistake home cooks make is overcrowding the pan. Stop overcrowding your pan to prevent the food from steaming instead of roasting. You will notice a whole new set of flavor profiles. Tip for Indian food. Use freshly ground spices instead of pre-ground spices. This is more expensive and time-consuming, so it is optional and mainly for people who cook Indian food regularly. Story 14. Place sugar and a drop or two of water in a dry pan. Heat gently until the sugar melts, taking care not to let it get too hot. Add any chopped fruit. Can be simple or elaborate, but it is very easy. Story 15. Sprinkle some Parmesan on top of your pizza before it goes in the oven. Story 16. If you are cooking and feel like something is missing, it often needs salt. This is not a formal technique, but a general rule of thumb that has never steered me wrong. Sometimes you add a little salt and it still needs something else, but often it is simply the salt. Story 17. Cornstarch will thicken a sauce and gives dishes such as Chinese food a nice glaze. I mix it with a little cold water or broth to dissolve it first. Story 18. Buy a whole chicken every week. You should be able to get one for $10 or less. Put the chicken and some aromatics in a pot and make your own chicken stock. Use it in everything. Cook rice with it, make sauces, and use it as a base for soups. Drink it hot from a mug. Once you always have homemade stock in the fridge, you will wonder how you ever did without. Story 19. Put some effort into plating. Presentation is a major part of how people perceive a dish. Do not just throw food on the plate and call it a day. Think through how you want it to look and wipe off any drips. It does wonders. Story 20. 2 tablespoons of butter? No, I think they meant 2 bricks of butter. Even better, if a dish can use butter, it can always use more. Story 21. Deglaze your pan with a little alcohol. If you are using a gas stove, you will have a small flame for a couple of seconds. My 8-year-old son loves it. Story 22. Add glutamic acid with soy sauce, tomato paste, monosodium glutamate, and Marmite. Marmite is best used in stews and gravies. Those are the most common and easiest to find ingredients that add glutamic acid to a dish. Use brown butter in baked goods. Make things from scratch. I am a home cook, but the person who introduced me to cooking has been a chef and restaurateur for over 50 years. He has always told me to use my background in science to make things as tasty as possible, which led me to glutamic acid and glutamates. Story 23. Get a lamb shoulder and marinate it with generous olive oil, salt, pepper, garlic, cumin, and dried oregano. Place it in a baking dish on top of sliced onions. Add 700 milliliters of water. Cover and seal with baking paper and foil. Bake at 150 degrees Celsius for 5 to 8 hours. Uncover for the last 30 minutes and bake at 200 degrees Celsius. Feel like a pro. Story 24. If you are making pulled pork and want it to be very tender and flavorful, season it with salt and pepper. Place the side with the fat facing up in a slow cooker. Set the slow cooker to low and cook for 12 hours. As it cooks, the fat will render and drip into the meat, giving it a wonderful flavor and great texture. Story 25. Learn basic sauces. Bechamel, roux, beurre blanc, hollandaise, ragouts, and marinara. Learn the mother sauces. Pat dry all proteins if you want a good sear or caramelization. Maillard reaction. Beef steaks, roasts, prime ribs, and primal cuts need far more salt than you think. For bright green, restaurant-style vegetables, blanch them by briefly boiling in rolling water, then quench in an ice bath. Shake dry in a strainer, then sauté briefly in a little oil or butter with your preferred seasoning before serving. Remove fish fillets and salmon steaks from the heat before they are completely cooked. They will finish with residual heat. Overcooked fish is not good. Shrimp, crab, and lobster cook very quickly from a thawed state. Overcooking makes them rubbery. Store-bought puff pastry is your friend for the quickest, tastiest appetizers and desserts. Story 26. People have been led to believe that salt is bad. In processed foods, yes, a microwave burrito can contain about 400% of the recommended daily sodium intake. But when cooking fresh food, you need salt. Proper seasoning can make your cooking taste amazing. Story 27. Scrub your lab equipment before you cook. Make sure your barrels of phenylacetic acid have a B on them. Otherwise, your yield will be very poor, and you will have to get a consultant from New Mexico to come down. He will call you an asshole. Story 28. When you make a ham and cheese sandwich, call it a croque monsieur. Watch Jacques Pepin cooking at home on YouTube for many simple and inexpensive recipes and techniques that often produce a fancy-looking result. Story 29. Pan sauce is the cheat code. After searing chicken or steak, pour off the excess fat, add a splash of wine or broth, scrape the brown bits, reduce the liquid, turn off the heat, whisk in cold butter, season to taste, and spoon the sauce over the meat. Instant restaurant vib. Story 30. Grilled salmon. Salt, pepper, lemon and garlic wrapped in foil and cooked on a grill. Story 31. Add toppings when plating. Chopped herbs, a sprinkle of nuts, a drizzle of olive oil, and other items that complement the dish. Bonus points if it is colorful. Story 32. Splashing sizzling oil is a technique Cantonese cooks use for steamed fish. A fresh fish is steamed above boiling water with no seasoning. It is as plain as it gets. After about 10 minutes of steaming, remove the fish, top it with thinly sliced ginger and scallions, then heat a few tablespoons of oil until it begins to smoke. Pour the hot oil over the ginger and scallions, then add a little good soy sauce. The sizzling, aroma, and sweetness of the fish will win over any guest. This technique is not limited to fish. Any steamed vegetables, steamed tofu, or blanched food that is healthy but a bit bland can use it. Steamed vegetables with this added sizzle will not only brighten the dish, it creates a mild Maillard reaction, also known as the dragon breath of Chinese food. This will take bland food to a new level. Story 33. Pommes Robuchon. Granted, it is a once or twice a year treat because of the richness. Running the potatoes through a food mill and adding about 70% of their weight in heavy cream and butter to achieve such results seems unfair. Story 34. Make fresh, homemade mayonnaise. Add your favorite seasonings for an easy, creamy dressing for salad or slaw, or for an elevated, authentic aioli dipping sauce. An immersion blender is the easiest tool to achieve this. Story 35. Caramelizing onions is just patience, but it makes you look like a Chad. Story 36. Most Jared items in our refrigerators are easy to make from scratch and taste much better. Mayonnaise, aioli, vinaigrettes, salsas, ketchup, barbecue, and other sauces take a little longer but are not very difficult. It is impressive to transform a few basic ingredients into a delicious condiment, especially when you have the process and ingredients memorized. Story 37. Texture and acid can elevate almost any dish. If you look down at your dish and everything is soft, it can fall flat. Toasted panko breadcrumbs are a universal hack that elevates almost anything. Toss toasted breadcrumbs with butter, garlic, parsley, lemon zest, and lemon juice, then sprinkle on top to cut through the richness of pasta or other creamy, fatty dishes. It is essentially a gremolata with breadcrumbs. Make ahead and store in the refrigerator. The breadcrumbs will stay crisp as long as you do not overdo the lemon juice or parsley. Fresh is always better. I like to add this to pasta or to top a piece of grilled or baked fish. It also makes a good topping for stews or soups if it can sit above the liquid. For an Asian dish, try crushed toasted peanuts and sesame seeds. For something more delicate or healthy, toss a small handful of arugula or another crunchy green with a simple dressing of lemon juice, olive oil, salt, pepper, and a little sugar or honey. A small amount used as a garnish can brighten anything that is bland or monotone. I often serve it as a small side salad. Story 38. 1 clove of garlic is never enough, unless the recipe is how to cook 1 clove of garlic. In that case, better to be safe and use 2. Story 39. Use a cast iron pot with a lid to roast a whole chicken. Season with rosemary, sage, thyme, and kosher salt. Add carrots, onions, sliced potatoes, or any vegetables you want to roast with it. If roasting vegetables, lightly coat them with olive oil before adding them to the pot. Roast at 425 degrees Fahrenheit for 20 minutes per pound with the lid on. For the last 30 minutes of cooking time, remove the lid, baste everything with the fat drippings, and continue cooking with the lid off. It takes about 3 hours for a low-effort, delicious dinner. Story 40. Dry brine a whole chicken overnight in the refrigerator before roasting it the next day. Use a convection oven at a very high temperature for a relatively short time to get perfectly moist chicken breasts. Heat is not a light switch. Food continues to cook after you remove it from the heat. The temperature will rise somewhat. Think of it like rolling a bowling ball down a lane. To stop at a specific point, you must roll it less than you think. Stop adding milk, water, cream, or other liquids to scrambled eggs to make them creamier. Instead, melt some butter in the pan and cook at low temperature. If the pan can melt the butter, it is hot enough for the eggs, and they may not look like they are cooking at first but will come together suddenly. Story 41. When I crack an egg with one hand, I dump it into a bowl and throw the shell away. Story 42. Supreming a citrus fruit is super easy. It does not take long. It is just a little messy. Story 43. Let your base or stock cook for hours. Although the recipe says 3 hours, cook it for at least 5 or 6 hours. Just gently simmer it. It will make a big difference. Story 44. You can solve a Rubik's Cube by memorizing some fairly simple algorithms and practicing your speed to reach about the 1-minute mark, which people think is mad. Story 45. Trader Joe's sells an umami condiment. I add it to almost everything I cook. I also add a package of mushrooms to most dishes that include vegetables. Story 46. Dried beans. Sauté some onion in olive oil. Add 1 pound of dried beans and 2 tablespoons of salt. Cover with water. Bring to a vigorous boil for 15 minutes. Then reduce to a low simmer and cook for 3 hours. This makes the most delicious bean soup you have ever had. Story 47. If you are making a vegetable platter, cut the top and bottom off each radish and make 4 side cuts almost to the bottom. Put the radishes in water overnight. Radish roses look decorative on a vegetable platter. Also put Knorr vegetable mix in a bowl. It is amazing. Story 48. Making macarons is easy, but everyone acts like they are ridiculously hard. Whenever you make them, you look like a professional baker. Story 49. If you are baking chicken breasts, carefully prick them with a fork on both sides about 20 times per side. This severs some muscle fibers and reduces shrinkage during baking, so the breasts retain more moisture. Story 50. Place a piece of fish on a large sheet of parchment paper with lemon, herbs, a drizzle of olive oil, and salt and pepper. Add a splash of white wine if you like. Fold the paper over and crimp the edges by folding them repeatedly. Bake in a hot oven for about 30 minutes. Even if the paper looks messy or comes undone, it still works. Open the bag at the table for extra points. Story 51. My significant other thinks it is super fancy that I make faces in sandwiches. I do not mean that you will find a mustard smiley face when you open it. I make the sandwich stare at you with pimento olive eyes and stick out a small slice of pickle, with an occasional red tomato nose. If it is appreciated, the effort is worth it. Sometimes the smallest things are what people notice, and the care you put into something is what makes all the difference. Do not try to impress someone with fancy techniques. Impress them with consideration. Story 52. Being able to make a quick pan sauce after searing meat is not hard at all, but it adds so much. I only see people who know how to cook do it. Story 53. I am an amateur baker. I get many compliments on my cookies, and people often ask how I achieve flavor, shape, and texture. The secret is to chill your dough before baking. It improves everything. My mother disagreed until she tried it, and she has done it ever since. Story 54. Garlic mashed potatoes. Boil peeled or unpeeled half potatoes for 20 minutes with a handful of whole peeled garlic cloves. When tender, mash the garlic and potatoes together. Add butter, cream or milk, and salt while mashing. Thanks, Betty Crocker. Story 55. One time I went to a person's house and they told everyone how they pickled red onions themselves instead of buying them. Everyone was so impressed that I wanted to say, "Don't you realize they just sliced a red onion and put it in a jar with vinegar and water?" Story 56. Salt, fat, heat, acid. Get a decent knife and learn to sharpen it. Learn your stove and its heat levels. I work in 4-minute intervals and adjust the heat. Practice regularly. Take a knife skills class or watch instructional videos online. Story 57. I'm not a cook myself, but a friend who used to be a chef told me about flambe. Pour some alcohol over the dish and briefly light it. People love the effect. Story 58. Confit dishes like tomatoes, peppers, and garlic taste fancy and are very simple. Story 59. Raymond Blanc taught me this on my television. Beans the French way. Get your top and tailed beans into a saucepan with a knob of butter, a sprinkle of salt, and the squeezed juice of half a lemon. Add a small splash of boiled water to the pan and heat on high for about 5 minutes. It is a game changer. People who usually refuse vegetables ask for seconds. Story 60. The marinade recipe on the back of Montreal steak seasoning is easy and truly delicious. 1/4 cup olive oil, 2 tablespoons soy sauce, 2 teaspoons Montreal steak seasoning. I use it on flank steak, and everyone raves about how good it is. Story 61. Flip food in the pan by moving the pan rather than using a spatula. It is all in the wrist and takes minimal practice. I also crack eggs with one hand. Before you say it does not impress people, many people have commented when they see me do either. Story 62. Beurre Monty is a simple water and butter emulsification that is very versatile. Bring a small amount of water to a simmer and whisk in cold butter until the mixture becomes thick and glossy. Add a little lemon zest, fresh dill, and salt. Pairs well with fish. My favorite application is on pancakes, waffles, or French toast because it adheres to the food better than plain melted butter and looks nicer. Story 63. Dry brine beef or pork for 1 to 3 days. Cover the protein evenly with salt. Place it on a rack with a sheet pan underneath to catch drips, and leave it uncovered in the refrigerator. If the protein has a fat cap, score the fat, not the meat, in a crisscross pattern so the salt reaches the cuts. Bend and massage the protein if needed to distribute the salt evenly. This process transforms inexpensive cuts into delicious meals. Story 64. Deglaze the pan after sautéing any ingredient. Use a small amount of wine, beer, vinegar, liqueur, meat or vegetable stock, or simply water. This is the perfect time to add aromatics such as herbs, spices, or some heavy cream to thicken the liquid, also known as a minute sauce. You can use that concentrated savory liquid for a sauce or vinaigrette, or simply to finish the plate and complete the flavors, unless it is burnt. Story 65. Use just enough seasoning so people can taste it but not know it is there unless you tell them. Learn to use the following ingredients well, and make sure you always have them on hand. Butter. It adds rich flavor but do not cook it at high temperatures. Limes. Sour pairs well with salty. Lime adds freshness and cuts greasiness. Vinegar. Similar to lime but stronger and cleaner. Fish sauce. It adds umami. You can greatly improve dishes if you learn to use it correctly. If your dish tastes hollow and could use salt, use fish sauce. Blanch green vegetables until their color brightens and they remain crisp. Season after blanching. Story 66. Making a roux is useful for almost any purpose. A while back this was circulating in the YouTube food community as something very technical, but you just mix flour and fat such as butter or oil and watch the color. I rarely even measure when I make one. Story 67. Flambe. Everyone oohs and ahs. If you're doing it correctly, you not only get the added flavor, you also won't burn down your house. Cherries Jubilee anyone? Story 68. There are many meals you can make in a crock pot that are low effort and tasty. They are all better if you make them in a Dutch oven in the oven at 300 to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Do the same thing you would do in the crock pot and put it in the oven instead for 4 to 6 hours. It may be because it is heated from all sides instead of just 1 to 3 sides. Story 69. Tableside Caesar with fresh dressing. Hasselback potatoes. Story 70. Use much more butter than you think, and choose good quality butter. Story 71. Add a little dry sherry or white wine to your creamy casserole sauce. Sprinkle extra cheese on top. People will wonder how you transformed a bland casserole into something delicious. Story 72. When you barbecue chicken breast, wrap a brick in aluminum foil and place it on top of the chicken while it is on the grill. Cook 7 minutes on each side. The chicken will be juicy and perfectly cooked. Story 73. Learning how to make crepes. They're like thinner, more liquid pancakes, but mastering the technique is what makes them look fancy. Story 74. When I take cookies out of the oven, I use a small water glass or a half-pint jelly jar while they are still hot to make them round. Sometimes you need to trim a bit from the edges. Other times, gently shaking or sliding the glass back and forth helps the cookie settle into that shape. A dozen perfectly formed yet homemade cookies will make people think you have taken your baking to the next level. Story 75. Use more salt, especially on vegetables. I always salt the lettuce and tomatoes before putting them on sandwiches, and I cannot tell you how many times people have said it is so much better when I make them. Because of the salt, restaurants and packaged foods taste better. You will have a heart attack before you are 40, but you will be well fed. Story 76. Butter emulsification. Do it with sauces, vegetables, pasta, or anything you can cook in a pan that would taste good with butter. Turn off the heat and let the pan cool until the food is just warm, not hot. If the pan is very dry, add some water or stock, just enough to get things moving. Then add the butter and stir constantly, making sure it does not split. This makes a sauce with strong body and a smooth texture, thick enough to coat everything in the pan. This is the first secret of most fine dining sauces and explains why they are so rich and pleasing to the eye. Tip: cauliflower puree, effectively cauliflower mashed potatoes. Melt a small amount of butter in a pan and cook a white onion until translucent without browning, then deglaze with milk. Simmer cauliflower until soft. Strain the vegetables, reserving the milk, and blend the vegetables into a smooth paste. Add salt, cold butter so it does not split, a white cheese such as pecorino for a stronger flavor if desired, white pepper, and enough reserved milk to reach the thickness you want, blending again until smooth. The puree takes on color well, can be piped or spooned for plating, and can serve as a base for a very creamy sauce or soup. Toss it with stock, more cheese, mushrooms cooked in the stock, and pasta for a rich cream pasta that has a fuller body and thicker mouthfeel than Alfredo but a lighter flavor. I once, after losing a dare, served a boiled beet on this and it made the beet tolerable to eat. It is kitchen magic. Story 77. Wet the dry ones. Dry the wet ones. Dust the wet ones. Story 78. If you like meatloaf, add about a teaspoon of baking soda to the mix. This will help keep the meat moist. Story 79. Instead of holding the knife with your hand wrapped around the handle, pinch the spine of the blade just above the handle. This gives you superior chopping control. This is why investing in quality knives is important. Cheap knives can hurt your fingers. A good set of knives, keeping them sharp, and proper technique make chopping very easy. Story 80. Man, I thought the post title said Cox of Reddit. What the fuck is wrong with me? Story 81. I found boxes of kettle and fire beef bone broth on markdown and now use it in everything. When making beef tacos, add bone broth to the pan with the taco seasoning instead of water. For chili, use bone broth instead of water. If your spaghetti sauce needs a bit more liquid, add bone broth. Deglaze the pan with bone broth. When cooking vegetables in a pan, add a little bone broth near the end. Story 82. Place the hollow graters on their side and slide items over them. It is much easier. Also, get a good knife. You do not need a $200 knife. A decent long-term brand will do wonders for $40 to $60. Story 83. Use wrist motions to stir food in the sauté pan instead of using a spoon. Story 84. I've had a couple of people tell me the best steak they ever had was from my backyard grill. It is not a secret. Many people do this, but if you follow each step, it will come out great. Marinate the steak with your favorite store-bought low-sodium marinade. You can add pepper at this point, but do not add salt. Let the steak sit at room temperature long enough to warm up. Preheat the grill until it is very hot. Place the steaks on the grill using tongs, do not pierce the meat, and do not move them. Let them sear until you see smoke, then flip and sear the other side. Turn the grill down to low and let the steaks cook slowly. Press your finger in the center of the steak to test doneness. It should give slightly but not be firm or squishy. After cooking, add salt, Remove the steaks and let them rest for at least 15 minutes so the heat redistributes. This makes a big difference in texture and juiciness. Story 85. My stepdad used to make banana flambé for special occasions. It was very easy and not that tasty, but everyone liked the fire. Story 86. Reverse searing steak and chicken. Perfect meat every time. Story 87. Butterflying stuffed chicken breasts was very easy. Story 88. The only really hard part of cooking is making the marinade for chicken. The easiest one to start with is oregano chicken. Use 1½ tablespoons of oregano, 1 heaping cup of Greek yogurt, 1½ to 2 teaspoons of salt depending on the amount of chicken, black pepper, red pepper, garlic, and ginger. Ginger is optional but refreshing and healthy. Add 1 tablespoon of olive oil and some vinegar or lemon for acidity if you want. Air fry at 380 degrees Fahrenheit for 18 to 20 minutes, flipping in the middle. Then add sliced green peppers and onions, wait a few minutes, and then add cherry tomatoes. That is the main dish. While that is cooking, make the beans and rice on the stove. Both are easy to prepare. An hour timer should go off because you also had potatoes in the oven. Store any leftover chicken in the refrigerator. Tip: keep your refrigerator at the coldest recommended setting to help keep food fresh longer. Story 89. Turbo egg. Pour about the width of your pinky finger of water into a microwave-safe glass. Break an egg into the glass. Microwave on high for about 40 seconds. Scoop the cooked egg out. It looks like a poached egg. Experiment with 1 or 2 seconds less or more, or a slightly different amount of water to get the perfect egg. Story 90. I use a 2-to-1 ratio either way. I think you should stick with whatever produces the results you like. Story 91. How done is your steak? Make an okay gesture with your thumb and index finger. The firmness of the meaty part of your palm below your thumb roughly matches how a medium-rare steak will feel. Thumb to middle finger indicates medium. Thumb to ring finger indicates medium well. Thumb to little finger indicates well done. Story 92. I used to make cheese soufflés. They were supposed to be difficult, but they turned out every time for me. I used a recipe from the 1973 to 1975 edition of The Joy of Cooking. Story 93. Make your own chicken stock at home. It's cheap, easy, and it beats the hell out of the box stock or broth you can buy at a store. I make a batch of this stock and seal it in mason jars to use in many different recipes. Story 94. A beurre Monty is an extremely easy sauce that seems very fancy. It just needs some patience and whisking, and it is not difficult at all. Story 95. Not a technique or particularly impressive, but a life pro tip. If you can buy only one kind of rice, choose a medium grain variety such as Calrose or Arborio. I recommend Calrose because it is typically available at Asian markets. It makes good white rice for everyday eating, and it is slightly sticky, so it is suitable for rice balls and sushi. It absorbs Indian and Thai curries well, works well with rice and beans, and if you break up cold leftover rice, it makes decent fried rice. You can also use it for risotto. Long grain rice may be cheaper, but medium grain rice is a versatile workhorse that can do almost anything. Story 96. If you have a stand mixer and can separate egg yolks and whites, soufflés are quite easy and always impressive. You can make sweet ones, such as chocolate soufflés, or savory ones, such as Gruyere and bacon. Story 97. Flambé. I learned how to make bananas Foster in college because it was affordable, easy, and delicious. People are usually very impressed when they see you make it. All you have to do is heat 2 to 4 tablespoons of butter in a pan with an equal amount of brown sugar for 2 to 3 minutes. Add a few ripe bananas, sliced as you like, and cook for another 1 to 2 minutes. Pour in about 1 shot glass of liquor that is at least 80 proof. I prefer spiced rum. Ignite the liquor. While the liquor is flaming, sprinkle some Vietnamese cinnamon for extra sparkle. Serve over cold vanilla ice cream. Story 98. Anchovy breadcrumbs. Melt some butter, add a few anchovies so they dissolve, and sauté with minced garlic. Fry breadcrumbs in the mixture. People rave about it. Roasted pumpkin bowls. Serve lentil soup or a hearty stew in half of a small roasted pumpkin. Favorites are an African peanut stew or a Hungarian paprika stew. It is super easy. Cut the pumpkin in half, oil it, and roast it. It is an absolute showstopper. The perfect soft boiled egg. Put the egg in boiling water, set a 6-minute timer, then remove and serve immediately or run under hot water. It is beautiful, and I often put one on a salad or in ramen. Flash pickling. You can pickle onions, radishes, carrots, cucumbers, and more by bringing vinegar and sugar to a boil, then tossing the vegetables in. Great for sandwiches and bowls. Story 99. Hands down. Flambe. Setting food on fire is easy, and most people will never try it at home. Make bananas foster for guests at home. I guarantee they will leave your house thinking you know how to throw down in the kitchen. Story 100. Squirt a little water onto the cast iron skillet with the fajitas before you serve them. It makes them sizzle. Story 101. Cream brulee is actually so easy. Eggs, sugar, cream, and vanilla. Story 102. Make a simple sauce in a sauté pan. Use heavy cream, good stock, and butter. Glaze it over any piece of meat and tell them you just finished culinary school. Story 103. Monosodium glutamate is your friend. My cardiologist recommended it to reduce my use of iodized salt. It makes everything taste more like itself. The best mashed potatoes I have ever made. Boil cubed Yukon Gold potatoes in equal parts canned milk and water with butter and monosodium glutamate. Drain most of the boiling liquid once the potatoes are fork tender. Add heavy cream, which does not need to be hot, and finish with butter and black pepper. The accent brand sold in grocery stores is monosodium glutamate. Story 104. Hollandaise made in the blender with butter that's been heated in the microwave is super easy and every bit as good as whisking your arm off with a bain-marie. Story 105. Learn to make brown butter. It is easy and takes only a bit of time, but it makes a huge difference when added to recipes. Story 106. Show up with a lattice top crust and people assume you are a wizard. Takes less than 10 minutes and very little thought. Story 107. To make a nice, thick, and creamy sauce, use eggs and evaporated milk instead of flour. It takes half the time and is foolproof. Story 108. Deglazing a pan is simply adding liquid to a hot pan after you have cooked something in it. It just sounds fancy. Story 109. Cream brulee is stupid easy and cheap to make. I do not even buy fancy ramekins. I just use 1-cup glass Pyrex storage containers with lids to chill them in the refrigerator. The most expensive equipment is the kitchen torch used to caramelize the tops at the dining table. My mother thinks it is very fancy when my husband makes it for dessert on Mother's Day. Story 110. Spatchcock a chicken and roast it in the oven at 375 to 400 degrees Fahrenheit for 1 hour. It always comes out juicy and delicious. It is the simplest thing I cook and a hit every time. Spatchcocking is easy and chicken is inexpensive, so you can season it in many different ways without it becoming the same old thing for the family. Story 111. Homemade mayonnaise is simple to make and tastes much better than jarred varieties. It requires egg yolks, lemon juice, oil, and a little salt. With an immersion blender, it takes a minute or two and the result is amazing. Story 112. Potato starch makes chicken, shrimp, and vegetables crispy. Season the protein or vegetables as desired, add a splash of water, and stir in enough potato starch to form a gooey batter. Add more potato starch to coat the outside so it is dry and looks white. Shallow fry in a pan with a neutral oil until the coating is crisp. Story 113. People think homemade marshmallows are voodoo magic. I started making them instead of cookies for parties because they are much cheaper to make. You do not need eggs or butter. Everyone is impressed, but honestly they are really easy to make and customize. Story 114. Herb butter finishing. Take soft butter, mix in fresh herbs and a pinch of salt, and place a dollop on a hot steak or roasted vegetables right before serving. It melts instantly, smells incredible, and suddenly your dish looks Michelin level without breaking a sweat. Story 115. Fancy technique? Maybe blanching or proper knife work. But I've always thought general knowledge and a sense of comfort are more impressive to my friends. Story 116. I like to grill a lot. I even buy grill pans and cook my vegetables in them. To get real flavor, I cook my meat on the rack directly above the vegetables so the fat drips down and flavors them. I like to make yakitori sticks wrapped in maple bacon. The maple bacon grease drips into the vegetables, and they taste amazing afterward. Story 117. Pickled vegetables and fruit are easy to make. All you need is a jar, a vegetable or fruit, vinegar, water, and sugar. They make a healthy garnish or addition to elevate the flavor of any dish. They are sweet, tart, and crunchy, often providing what a dish lacks. Here are some examples: pickled red onions, pickled cucumbers, pickled jalapenos, pickled mango. Story 118. Quickly pickled vegetables, cooking grains in stock or sauce, and making a vegetarian gravy with a seasoned roux and vegetable stock are three techniques that create an impressive plant-based meal. Story 119. You can puree anything to make your plates look fancy, but it is a waste of time. Story 120. Take the air fryer tray and shake it so the dino nuggets cook evenly. It makes you look professional. Story 121. Making a Neapolitan. Until I did it, I didn't realize the lines in the frosting were made by dragging a toothpick. Story 122. My favorite fancy technique to impress people is reading the fucking recipe. No, I am not joking. If you want to make something, find recipes for it and make it exactly as they say. If you like a recipe, it is yours and you can modify it however you want. If you do not understand how to make something, look it up. This will lead you to some amazing places. I learned how to make a roux, a bechamel from that roux, what a cornstarch slurry is used for, and the classic frying method using flour, egg wash, and panko. The biggest secret to cooking is learning how to make something. For example, take mac and cheese. If you want to make your own cheese sauce, start with a basic roux, equal parts fat, usually butter, and flour. Whisk them together over medium heat until the raw flour smell goes away. This usually takes a few minutes. Turn the roux into a bechamel by slowly pouring in milk. If you pour it all at once, it will break. Start with a little. It will form a thick, gloopy dough, which is normal, so keep stirring. Continue adding milk a bit at a time. As you add more, the sauce will thin out. Keep adding small amounts until you have added all the milk and the sauce reaches the desired consistency. That consistency is something you learn by practice. Then add your cheese to the sauce. Congratulations, you have learned useful fundamentals that apply to many dishes. The next time you see a recipe with roux or bechamel, you will know how to make it. Story 123. Bananas Foster. It is just flambéed bananas with butter and brown sugar. Easy, impressive, and delicious. Story 124. I have made tomato sauce many times, but pureeing it until smooth makes it feel much more luxurious and restaurant quality. It only takes about 2 minutes with an immersion blender, and the texture becomes creamy, clinging to the pasta much better. A small change that makes a big difference. Story 125. I would not call this a technique, and I do not know if others have mentioned it, but making Caesar salad dressing from scratch requires anchovies. It is very easy to learn. Story 126. For me, it is a quick pan sauce. Sear the meat, splash in wine or broth, then add butter and herbs. Done. It looks fancy but is so easy. Story 127. Beurre Blanc. If you can mount a sauce with butter, you can make beurre blanc. It is versatile because you can switch up the base, such as citrus juice, wine, vinegar, kombucha, sake, and so on. It is quick once you know how to do it, and it looks like you are doing a lot when you are really just tossing in chunks of butter. Plus, the name is French, so it sounds impressive to people who are not familiar with the technique. Story 128. Safe use of a butane torch. People are entertained by fire. Story 129. Flipping food in a pan is easy to do. To learn, use the bottom of a hamburger bun. Story 130. Brown butter. Melt butter and let it quietly foam until the milk solids turn golden and smell nutty. Remove from the heat and add a splash of lemon juice. Toss with pasta, vegetables, eggs, or fish, and it will taste like you cooked for hours. Story 131. Put a handful of grass from the nearest lawn or field into whatever you are making. When people see grass in a dish, they often say it looks fancy. I do it for everything. Taking an eyelash off someone's cheek, replace it with grass. Have a cut or bruise, rub grass on it. Is Thanksgiving ruined because you ran out of bread? Stuff the turkey with grass. Did not buy a turkey? Skip the middleman and fill a plastic bag with grass. People may notice, but many will be too polite to comment. Call it turkey. Story 132. You can make roses from tomato peels or other peels. Simply roll the peel and set it in place. It looks fancy and is edible. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.